realize, sorry, this head didn't draw correctly. You can see we've got this potential inverse head and shoulder forming. And so expect us over the next few days to really find out the overall direction of Bitcoin. So we're going to look at stocks alongside with some startling statistics when we look at a chart from Glassnode. You guys know I love bringing these charts out. There is a chart here that saw an all-time high today, and that was the USDT number of transfers. And the last time it saw this was September 9th, 2019, when Bitcoin broke out initially from the bottom of the 2017 rally. So stay tuned. We'll go through that chart. Make sure to like the video if you guys are watching this after the live stream, and we'll take some questions. I see we've got Marwan, Hector, and Chris on our live. Good to have you guys on YouTube. So this inverse head and shoulder potentially forming, and this is a daily chart for Bitcoin. This to me would be the most bullish perspective because, as we all know, stock markets are really grappling Bitcoin right now, and we're being held back because of these equity markets. If we pull up this SPY chart, you can see here we saw a second day down, the Dow losing over 600 points. And interestingly enough, when we look at some of these market leading indicators like the transportation sector, I want you to realize that the market always has a destination, but look how it decided to close on a Friday below that support level. And that's really the last support that we've got inside of this falling wedge, which we know is a bearish pattern. And so are the transportations going to see a push to the downside? Very likely. As you can see, we're now below that 50-day moving average as it's coming down. It's already tested and it's closed below that 50-day. And so this could show us where the stock market will head on Monday, and that could also correlate into Bitcoin. As we know, there's such a strong correlation right now with the equity markets and Bitcoin, being that it's not just a storage of value, but also a volatile asset. You can see here when we look at my favorite market leading indicator in the equity markets, the Russell 2000, this encompasses the small businesses. We actually closed above that 50-day moving average. So once again, there's always going to be a destination. And so you're only as good as your last trade. And if you're not looking for the direction, what's the point of looking for where the pullback is going or where the breakout is going if there's something currently happening and is in the process of occurring? So we're going to look at all of this and then cover that chart of USDT and why it showed an all-time high on September 9th, 2019, and it's just now showing a new all-time high. And if you look at the chart, I'm just going to go straight to it. You can see when we pull up September 9th of 2019, it was actually right here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up for you. Let me actually do a 4-hour chart so you can actually get a better view of what I'm talking about. Or we'll just use the daily, and I'll actually just extend this. But we look at September 9th and what happened here. So we go into, let me go ahead and pull this up. So September 9th, 2019. Let me make sure we've got this showing on our chart. So first and foremost, I want you guys to realize the potential here of this market structure coming to play. So this was when we last saw USDT all-time highs for the number of transfers, and it was following this bearish flag that initially ended up dropping and forming this cup. And of course, we all know right now the fundamentals of the market are not on the side of the bulls. And so realize that when we see charts like this and we realize that there are a potential there's potential indicators showing that we may not necessarily be in a full-on uptrend, we have to take note of that and realize the market is going to do what we least expect. So something that I find very interesting about this chart here specifically is if we actually pull up this chart here, what you can see is we've got this area that has yet to be tested at that 100 and 200-day moving average, and it also correlates with the resistance of this falling flag that's forming here. So there is that potential we come down here. And so I don't want to go into my chart because of course there's a lot more advanced analytical aspects of it that you guys might not fully understand. I'm actually going to pull it up here. So this is the chart that I'm personally looking at. As a matter of fact, I don't mind going through a little bit of this chart just so you have an idea of what I'm personally looking for right now when it comes to the margin trades. Because at this point, when it comes to swing trading, we already have established that the risk to reward ratio is not necessarily present here when we've got this overheading resistance at that $10,000 to $10,500 level. And of course, if we break past that, we can confirm that all macro trends have now broken bullish into the upside. But for now, we have to understand that we're looking for a top. We're looking for the right short. Is the short here? In my opinion, it's not. I think here is going to be a level in which Bitcoin has a high chance of trading sideways up until Sunday. And once the stock market decides whether or not it wants to see another harsh week, that's when Bitcoin is going to decide whether to come back down and test this level or to break out to the upside towards this resistance that it purposely did not go into, because this right here, if we look, is a very macro resistance level. And so it purposely put a break right before that resistance. It broke through every other resistance, but it purposely took a seat on the bench, went on the sidelines and said, I'm going to have a cup of coffee and just wait. And so there's a reason for that, because of course, if it just decided to pause there, we know that's not the final destination. So realize at the end of the day, when we assume that there is a destination and it has yet to reach that destination, because of course, if it really wanted to top out, why didn't it just go a couple hundred points higher, and if not less than 200 points higher, and touch this resistance before coming back down? And you can look at the Coinbase, the BitMEX, the Binance charts. They all missed that ascending or that descending resistance level inside of this flag pattern or this bullish symmetrical triangle on the macro. So we know that it's having a cup of coffee right now. Bitcoin is sitting on the sideline on the bench because it has yet to reach its destination. And so whether that destination is going to come to the downside and possibly retest that $8,300 level before seeing another move to the upside potentially to test these resistance levels again and then eventually go up, or if it's going to just sit here on the sideline on the bench until markets open Monday and they decide the direction of where we're headed. And so that's why I want to emphasize the importance of the stock markets right now, because we understand that since the start of 2020, Bitcoin has started to highly correlate with the SP 500, and then obviously it switches off to other assets. I saw a chart the other day of the Great British Pound and the Japanese yen correlating with Bitcoin. And so everyone is making up these different assumptions of what Bitcoin is correlating with. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to go with the major trend. So the one thing I like about Bitcoin right now is the fact that when we go on a daily chart, if we look here, you can see we're above all three moving averages. And so we know with the equity markets, the NASDAQ and the Qs, which are the tech side, are the only ones that are really above all of these moving averages. Realize that this is very positive for Bitcoin right now. And so outside of that, I do want to talk a little bit about the hash rate as well as the crypto fear and greed index, and then we will take some questions from our live audience. Sorry, it's Friday night. I have some people over right now, and it's kind of distracting, but I really am expecting to see a lot of movement coming into next week and a final ultimatum on the direction that we're headed. And so when we look at the total hash rate, you can see we've kind of got this cup and handle formation. I assume that as we're 11 days from the Bitcoin halving, we're going to start to see some momentum come in. We'll see new highs with hash rate. We'll see a lot of mining hash power come on before the Bitcoin halving to take advantage of the block rewards before they get cut in half. And so expect hash rate to go up. Let's not freak out and say that's the biggest bullish sign for Bitcoin, but realize that we do have a potential case of a more macro bullish scenario here, knowing that if Bitcoin doesn't decide to become the storage of value, which we've kind of already established, it's not a secure preservation of wealth during an uncertain time. However, we have yet to come up with the assumption that it may be a more volatile asset in the direction that the overall markets are headed. So if the equity markets are heading down, we could possibly assume, just like we saw in the start of March and April, Bitcoin follow the stock market down, but we have to first see how the stock market wants to unfold as we open on Monday. And of course, we'll have the Sunday night futures, and to see what occurs there? If we see a breakout, Bitcoin has that potential and has that room to go to that $10,500 level, form a proper neckline, and then finally top out and then come down and form a potential shoulder here at that $6,200 level, which would then be the prime entry. By that point, the 200-week moving average may have already moved up to that. And like we've talked about, that 200-week moving average being a prime entry for Bitcoin. King D13 on YouTube says, I don't know, but banks are telling people not to buy Bitcoin, but so buying in is the right decision. Interesting. Nathaniel says, what is the minimal amount you would say to have saved up to get a valid position? You can buy fractions of Bitcoin, so it doesn't matter how much. It's more of a matter of percentage and allocating your capital properly. MA63 says it's gathering all the FOMOs and then crush them. You know, we saw that huge rally leading up to the halving in 2016. This is a little bit different. By then, if we were to compare this to now, we would have already seen a drop, but the equity markets are seeing strength that we didn't expect. And once again, I mentioned this earlier, you're only as good as your last trade. And so at the end of the day, we know there's a destination and the market's going to do what we least expect. And so if everyone's expecting downside, then it's going to go up. If everyone is expecting upside, it's going to go down. And so realize right now people are like, oh, things are back to normal. Things are going to open up soon. Everything is okay. And by the way, there's a full moon coming up May 7th. If you guys do technical analysis and cross-reference it with moon cycles, I know some analysts like to do that. You do see some startling correlations, but I think that this upcoming week is going to be the week that tells us, is this the runaway May or is this going to be a bullish May? But, you know, it rhymes, right? It's, you know, as soon as May comes, go away, right? It's like sell everything. But I think we have a little bit more of a case to see upside before we see the final push up and completely top out. And so there's that potential inverse head and shoulder forming here. But to get back on track with the video, we'll take some more questions from the live audience. I want to talk about Bitcoin dominance here. I know we're seeing some gains with altcoins. We're seeing some push down occasionally when we go into these more lower time frame charts, and then we'll see some altcoins gain momentum. But overall, we're seeing Bitcoin dominance take over. And obviously, we've got a destination here. So it's heading towards that 200-day moving average. We've already broken above the 50 in that 100-day. Now, that golden cross here, you can assume on a lesser note, is present here. And so we can't avoid this golden cross. It is just the 50 and the 100-day moving average. Of course, it would be more of a confirmation if it crossed above the 200-day moving average, but that's a very big possibility that could really hurt altcoins. And I can see that being the case, knowing that the fundamentals here are not on the bulls' favor. And so when it comes to more speculative assets, Bitcoin is speculative enough. When it comes to altcoins, it's even more of a speculative asset. So be very careful with altcoins during a time like this where people want to preserve their wealth and diversify. And of course, the bigger whales, the larger investors, they want to have a more proper pool of diversification for any potential breakouts. And of course, I don't see why a wealthy person wouldn't put 1% of their investable capital into Bitcoin, because we're going into such uncertain time. And that, for a $100 billion market like cryptocurrencies, shows that there's a ton of potential of upside. So looking at that chart is interesting to me. And then we are going to wrap this live stream up soon. If you guys are appreciating this content, make sure to like this video. Buddy V says, Habibi. Marjwan says, thanks for still coming online. Absolutely, guys. So interestingly enough, we talked about my favorite market leading indicator, the Russell 2000, above that 200-day moving or 50-day moving average, very positive for now. And so let's move on. Look at the fear and greed index. Remember Warren Buffett, be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. You can see we've got fear still in the market, but we know there's a huge shift because this was at 20 at the start of the week. So it's almost doubled already. It was at 44 on Wednesday. Now it's come down to 40. So we know there's still fear. There's that high potential. We see one more leg to the upside to clear those shorts and throw some pies at people's faces. And if you're part of Wall Street Bets, you know, maybe you might be better off at a casino at this point, because if you've been shorting the markets, it's been brutal. And I've been telling you guys, yes, we're looking for another leg down, but don't be so into it, right? You just watch the market, be unbiased, and realize that it's going to do what we least expect. And of course, we went down, and we went down really hard and really fast. So expecting the type of recovery that we're seeing right now as a short-term leg up, it's highly reasonable, and I think that it may still have some room to go until we finally see a top out. So people are still fearful. This is the time that a lot of the institutions like to come in, and then of course they'll sell when everyone feels like everything's okay, and they start getting greedy, and that's when we see things top out. But we know there's a momentum of buyers coming in. As much as we know there's global chaos with the pandemic and lockdowns, of course, I'm hoping each and every one of you guys watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter are doing well with your families during this hard time. But there are people out there that have wealth and they want to preserve it. And so we're seeing inflow and capital into these markets. Of course, the feds, you never want to fight the feds, right? I've always talked about that, or else they would have threw some pies at your face over the last few weeks trying to short the market. So we're at a point where this next week, and as it unfolds, is going to be crucial to see where we're headed. Confirmed transactions per day forming a higher high, still at a very firm uptrend approaching the Bitcoin halving. So at the end of the day, I believe that the point in which we're at, the market levels that we're at this resistance area, it's a good time to take a seat, get on the bench just like Bitcoin did today, and wait things out to see how the next week is going to unfold. Be very careful trading into this weekend. But for those of you that love those margin trades, I know we're starting to update the way that we send out our signals on Discord. But of course, for me personally, when I'm looking at a more macro chart here, and I'm showing you guys this because most volume comes from derivative traders. So I assume a lot of you guys trade Bitcoin with margin and leverage. You know, I kind of don't want to be around the $7,000 or $8,700 range in an entry anymore. And the reason I say that is there's multiple different patterns that can be forming here. I would rather get a long entry down towards that $8,300 to $8,200 range and a potential short entry around that $9,100 range, but more importantly, get that short right around that $9,600 range. So that's really what I'm watching here. Just knowing that these are these are crucial levels. One very crucial level that I want you to pay attention to is going to be that $8,700 range right here. We don't want to see some big candle closes below that. If we see a daily candle close below that, we can assume some bearish pressure. And so that's what I'm watching when it comes to the shorter term charts. I'm going to wrap this video up. Eric Avereta in YouTube says, "Stay on, bro. I'm bored." Well, if you guys want to have some fun and get into the Discord and have fun there, I know a lot of you guys love that chat. I don't want to take up too much of your Friday night, but I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I'm going to wrap this video up here. Nathaniel says, "Blessings to you." Thank you. Blessings to you back. Majwaran says, "So everyone thinking Bitcoin going up because of halving, so it would likely go down after a top out, of course." So somebody says, "Sell the cup, make profit." Interesting. C. Mata says, "Warren Buffett will be on the Berkshire call tomorrow. Do you think that will affect the market?" No, I mean, we know there's going to be a hesitant tone. We know there's going to be a negative start. I'm sure he's a very rational person, but Warren Buffett tends to be a more optimistic investor. So I think we'll kind of hear the same old buy index funds and hold for a long time, and he's probably not going to talk too much about why he sold his Delta shares. But I'm just kidding, because we know that was to get away from the SEC requirements of reporting all of your purchases when you own more than 10% or you're more than 10% majority shareholder. So we know that's why he sold Delta, but I'm just playing around there. But, I think that we all kind of expect Warren Buffett's tone to be obviously not as optimistic as usual, but he'll most likely have an optimistic outlook on the future of where things are headed, as he always does. Of course, that being his profession, him being a very successful investor in his own right. So somebody says, "You say my name worse than the halving." LOL. I'm sorry. There's people all around the world watching our content. I can only be so accurate with that. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Once again, if you guys are trying to get into a longer term position for Bitcoin, wait this out, see if this long-term resistance gets broken. If not, then that lower entry at that $6,200 level for that inverse head and shoulder is really what I'm watching for. And I would not mind getting that position at 6,100, knowing the type of bullish pressure we have here. And we know that there's a hype with this Bitcoin halving coming up in less than 11 days. So don't get caught up into that, right? There are people that have priced this in years ago. There are people that have really analyzed what the move was going to be as this was going to come. So you don't want to be part of the majority, always be a part of the minority. And if everyone's getting in, it's probably a good time to take a step back and question things, right? But we always want to have an unbiased opinion here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see you guys later. It's Friday night. It's actually now Saturday.